So I wanted to do this quite particularly around G Suite and Classroom, because again, quite often, just habit, I think I quite often demonstrate using Office 365 tools. Those are what I tend to work with day to day. Could quite as easily work with G Suite. It's just, as I say, a habit more than anything. But again, wanted that to be clear to people that we're not just using one platform or another. So got a very similar session to today running tomorrow for educators that are using Office 365 and Teams. And I guess that the key part to this is really just some ideas to help you or for you to take away and share with your colleagues how you can use those two platforms, G Suite and Classroom, to deliver online learning, or how you could deliver online learning and some of the opportunities for that. I guess the key part of this, and it comes under the expectations, those will come from your management team and your local authority about what the standard is or what the expectations are for how much you deliver or how you deliver or what you deliver. But the key parts is always going to be the same as that why, and it's about learning, teaching and assessment to help our learners make progress. So the key part of it, I suppose there's a balance for me. I would be considering if they are totally au fait with the platform like G Suite and Classroom, then it's probably going to be a lot easier to make forward steps in learning from the off, but it might be that you're having to introduce some new tools and new ways of working here, and for that personally I would probably start with a bit of consolidation to make sure my learners know the platform and they're familiar with how that works before I make my move forward. But again, there is obviously going to be an expectation about learners moving forward in their education and about improvement and how we do that, even in challenging times such as now. What I would say is to take away from today is about the how. As ever with professional inquiry and professional learning, pick one or two bits that you think are going to have the most immediate impact and try those in your classroom and see how you can take them forward and improve them and really develop those one or two threads. I wouldn't expect anybody to be coming away from today doing absolutely everything if you've never seen it before. I wouldn't be expecting everybody to be running before they're walking. So again, that thread of realism there. So I guess the way that I'd like to present this today, and I've put it in for an hour and a half, and again, you're free to stay as long as you wish, but just to give you an outline of it, I'll try and do the first sort of 10-15 minutes here, a bit of introduction about some of the context, some of the big questions that we've kind of come across already from educators and we've considered. So we'll do a bit of that and then get into some practical for the most part for about an hour, and I have made it an hour and a half. It might only take an hour, but just I felt that some of the webinars at the end of last year and even on Tuesday was down for an hour, and it easily ran. Lots of great comments, question and discussion at the end, and that kind of ran a wee bit over about an hour and 15 minutes. So I've just given us the time today. It's down as an hour and a half. If it finishes early, grand, and if it goes on a wee bit longer, it means we're scheduled to last that wee bit longer if there are questions and feedback that people would like to share at the end. So as I said I guess for me this would be a bit like coming back in August. I would always make a point after any kind of extended break, depending on your class, sometimes it might even be after every weekend you feel you have to go back and re-establish routines, but I would certainly in January be re-establishing routines with my learners. They've been off for a few weeks, and I think in this case it's I guess for me it's very much a parallel of moving to a new classroom. If you imagine you come back after the winter break and you'd had a leak in the classroom, and so you turn my camera off for a wee second there. If you come back and there was a leak in your classroom and you'd had to decant to another room, there's an element of that to this. So except this one's in a different building in a different locality, and it's very different. So but you're going to have to consider some of the questions I've got here that I've got from teachers I've spoken with, and some from the evaluations that we did on Tuesday. Again, happy for you to add questions to that as we go, or at the end of the session if you think there's more that we need to look at and explore. But I guess the big parts are how the learners are going to get access to that learning and teaching, how they're going to hand it in, where do they get the resources. Those questions you can see on the screen, and I suppose the big ones are the how did they access it and what happens if they're stuck. The ones in the middle I'll cover with some quite the practical bits on screen, and we'll have a look at a wee bit about how G Suite and Classroom work, but really try to put them into context. And I've picked again Numeracy and Literacy. Just again, with my primary teacher hat on, I know that that's the two areas I would be expected to maintain first before covering other areas of curriculum. That would have been the expectation in my school, I believe. So that's what I've worked off of. I've spoken to a few teachers that I know, and they've said it's very similar things. Numeracy and literacy first and foremost, and then other subjects. And again, that might be different in your school or local authority, so I can appreciate that, but that's the model I've worked to. So I'll try and go through each of these questions and answer them as best I can. First bit's then about access and learning. It should only be your learners. We have guidance around cyber resilience and internet safety, which is based on the national agencies and bodies such as NCSC about how passwords should be made to be safe, or as safe as possible. Adults should never be using it. That shouldn't be the teacher. That shouldn't be an adult at home. There should never be an adult accessing a learner's Glow account. That should never be something that's done. Technically, it is hacking if somebody's accessing without the correct permissions. But I doubt that's going to end in any sort of prosecution. But definitely learners should be the only ones accessing their Glow account. There should be no standard class passwords. So if they're in primary 6 is primary 6 as a password. And if you think about it, that means that any learner has access to any other learner's account, because if you've got a class password and you know the way that your Glow username is made up, let's say it's GW14 Millican G, then I can presume that somebody else in the class, Rob Smith, is going to be GW14 Smith R, because that's the pattern that's been used for my school or my local authority and Glow usernames. So once you know your username, you can have a good guess at anybody else's, and passwords are all the same. It means you can get into somebody else's Glow. You can be sending unsolicited emails or writing Word documents. You can be doing a bunch of things that are a bit unsavoury, and you can't account for that. And in the worst cases, if adults or other children or young people at home, say someone's got a big brother or big sister, or even in the worst case, an adult who might feel the need to go into a class team, and your child's picking on my child, who knows what they could be writing in teams. But again, you've shared those passwords, you've made that the case, that you've made that possible. That effectively makes you liable if you've shared that. Or in some worst cases, we've seen people. Oh, just a wee reminder there that we're recording this and everybody should have their microphones off. Thank you. So there's a wee part of thinking about the passwords and how you share that before you get your learners onto things like Classroom and Teams. The last thing we want is sharing class passwords or usernames across things like social media platforms for everybody and anybody. So I've put a wee link to a tweet I found from a school in East Renfrewshire there. I think it was that we're talking about, they've set up a form using a Microsoft or a Google form for learners to request passwords if they need that, so that they're getting shared securely. And again, just a reminder there about 3 random words. That's the main bit of guidance there. I know Glow asks for additional parts like capital letters, punctuation, etc. But we've really got to consider where the safety of our learners comes in when we're asking them to work online as well. So wee bits there at the start. And again, just a reminder that you might want to embed those cyber resilience, internet safety, E's and O's into other parts of your learning, part of your week, and teaching learners about passwords, being cyber resilient and being safe on the internet. So again, I'm going to share these slides at the end so you can go back and have a look at some of these and familiarise with some of the ideas as you go. Again, everything that we talk about today, there's loads of examples of it here on our DigiLearn Scott website. I won't take you to it just now, but the key parts you're probably going to be looking for are the learning paths. You'll find loads of examples there for tips and hints for using things like G Suite and Classroom. And also some theoretical bits like maybe a bit of retrieval practice or dual coding for the materials that you are producing. So definitely worth having a look there, and you'll be able to watch the recording. This will be shared on this team, but also in the webinars catch-up section. So superb. So what I shared on Tuesday was just a demo timetable. I'll show you that just now. Some people found that really useful, get feedback around that. Again, just ideas. You might want to break your day up into parts where you provide flipped learning for the learners to do on their own independently, and then there's perhaps a time that you put your camera on, or at least have a Teams or a Google Meet where you are available to be talked to. So your learners can come on and can share things that are happening in their day, what they've been up to over Christmas, or to ask specifically about bits of learning. So again, it's just how you want to structure your day. These are just suggestions, and I've done two models that work opposite. I've got one where we do flipped learning, and then I put the camera on and have a chat with my learners just to discuss any support, whether that's well-being or obviously if it's child protection stuff, I would make sure I've got another adult on the call, follow your school and local authority guidance and that. And then again, a wee bit of literacy learning, and then I'd have my camera on again after that, maybe about lunchtime, for learners to be able to check in. And all I'm doing is, there's no expectation that my learners do their numeracy at that time between 9 and half 10, but I'm saying that I will be available between 10:30 and 11 and say 12:30 and 1:30, so that my learners know that there is a time to be able to contact me if they need that I'm setting that time aside in my day. I'm not stuck to the computer all day, they're not stuck to the computer all day, but there will be times where I can say I will be on the computer, and that might be what some learners need. But again, that's up to you, your school and your local authority's guidance about what you are expected to do there. And again, I'm suggesting about, if we're doing maths for an hour in the morning, that learner might not well be able to access that, the laptop to do their work until 6:30 at night. That's fine. But what I think would be useful is, and I know some families will be looking for a kind of a structure to the day. If they are able to follow it, you're giving it, and again, you're putting a caveat that if they can't follow that, that's absolutely fine. These are just suggested times for working to help some with their structure. The opposite of that, the inverse I've created is where I'd maybe start with having a video call, and I might do a wee bit of maths input and then let my learners go away and do the learning. However, I know that my learners get stuck in the class even when I'm there, so rather than me talking to them and then let them go away and get stuck, I'd rather they went and tried the task, maybe get stuck, but then they can come back to me and I can support them with the parts they're stuck at, rather than providing that input to everybody and then having to try and chase it up again, which means I've got to be on screen 2 times rather than once. And also there's an element of equity there. If I am doing live online teaching and I'm introducing a new concept where I am on the video and my pupils are watching, if a learner misses that, then they're automatically at a further disadvantage. So for my preference, certainly in our team, we would be suggesting you probably want to take a flipped approach where you deliver some learning, learners can do it independently, you've got all the resources and all the materials they require, and then you're available for a check-in later on where you can support them with any issues. So that's just again a model. I've shared that, it's available on Twitter, it's available in this team, and you can get it from following the link in the presentation I'll share at the end as well. So some key bits to think about then will sound dead obvious, again going back to the moderation cycle, but know what you want to teach. Not everything that you want to teach is going to work online. Sometimes you're going to have to say, well, that's maybe not the lesson to teach just now, we were going to do a block of hockey for PE. So obviously you would be changing that. Again, there might be parts of numeracy or literacy that you think that's what I really want to teach, but I need specific resources, or the learners need those. Or so if it doesn't suit to online, it just might not be the thing to be teaching just now. You might have to make changes to your plans, but I would definitely make clear in any learning that you provide your expectations, your E's and O's, success criteria, any resources, materials that learners need. You're providing all of that at the start so that learners are able to work independently. Because you aren't going to be there for them the whole time like you would be in a class. So lots of new habits forming. Again, I focus on the flipping the learning and following that up. And again, as much as you can, I always say it, be kind to yourself and try and get the learner to do the thinking. So you could make a maths worksheet with 30 questions on it, and you could do that 5 times a week, or you could ask them a good big question. You could give them a calculation like 15 add on 49 and say, what do you notice about this calculation? What else do you wonder about calculations like this? Can you think of 2 similar calculations? Can you show me 3 or 4 ways to do this calculation with different strategies you've been teaching? So again, trying to get them to think again, if you're using a text for literacy, rather than giving them a text a day and 5-10 questions every day, if you can use that same text and ask big open-ended questions that really get the learner to think and respond creatively, then again they're doing a wee bit more of the work than you. You've got less planning and delivery to do. So just a few thoughts there. They're probably common sense, but definitely worth repeating. And again, the last part, just before the practical element here, is what I'm going to show you is using assignments to set the tasks. I'm suggesting a week. It might be easy to think about that as across, again, we're just different learners being able to access at different times. They might just not be able to access any learning on Monday. So do they just miss a day's learning, or have you planned a kind of week's worth of learning that they can maybe do a wee bit extra on Tuesday so that they're still maintaining the amount of learning there? Decisions for you as the class teacher. Again, keep going back, E's and O's success criteria. We'll probably do it in our classroom, but see lots of examples where people forget to make those clear and explicit in their online because they just see it as a different kind of platform, and they don't maybe carry over all the good habits from the physical classroom to the virtual one. So I'm suggesting use assignments for that to keep that all clear and in one place. And again, that falls into the last point there about any instructions and materials. Put those as part of the assignment. Don't have your maths materials are on a web link that you've put on your classroom, but then you've got an assignment that's got a video in it, and then you're just putting in the chat section or an email, different places for different things. Everything should be in one place when a couple of clicks for the learner that they're able to come on and access their learning and anything they need. I always say in my class, if we're doing writing and I want them to do it a bit in A4 paper, it's my job to hand out the A4 paper. If I want them to do it in their maths jotter, it's my job to provide them the maths jotters. Again, it's the same for online learning. If I want them to do a PowerPoint, I should be creating an assignment with a blank PowerPoint for the learner, because that's where I want it done. You might be giving them more freedom and creativity to use different materials, that's fine, but I think if you're asking them to do a particular task on a particular platform, you should be providing those materials like you would in class. And again, I'm not going to go through these just now, but just for different platforms, the Google ones are there. You've got voice typing and docs. Read and Write's the most common one that we see used, but there are others available. For your Chrome extensions, you'll need to see a Glow Key contact about which ones are available to you. But there are tools there that can support learners accessing texts online. So definitely worth having a look at those as well when you consider the learning that you're planning.